2014 Nissan Altima. This is the 4-cylinder SV model. We're going to do front and rear brakes, and I want to show you just how easy of a brake job can be. Everybody should know how to at least put brake pads on their cars, and the reason is because if you this car's only got about 50,000 miles on it. All 4 brakes are worn evenly, and need to be changed. All the rotors look good. The only thing this car needs is pads. If you have to take this car to a shop, they're going to probably tell you that you need rotors, and there's a good possibility that they're going to tell you that you need calipers. Before you get out of there, it's going to be $800 to $1,000, and all you really truly needed was just fresh pads. Now, ideally, it is good to have the rotors turned, but it is not absolutely necessary. If the rotors are smooth and not grooved, if they're not glazed, you can throw new pads on and they are going to work. You're not going to be able to tell a difference between having the rotors turned and not, as long as the pedal isn't pulsating, meaning when you step on the brake pedal, you feel it, pulsating against your foot. The rotors, that means the rotors are not warped. Especially if the car is stopping good and there's no problem, you just notice that the pads are starting to get thin and you want to put new pads on, there's no reason to go to a shop and have them charge you for rotors, calipers, whatever else they're going to tell you you need. Go to the parts store, buy you a set of $20 pads, and do it yourself. I'm about to show you how easy it is. This is a typical brake setup on a lot of the modern cars today. The design is pretty much the same on a lot of them. So I'm going to show you the easy way to do it. First thing you want to do is come up to the master cylinder, which is right here, and just loosen the cap. Check the fluid level. And let me get a light. If it's been topped off, like it looks like this one probably has been, whenever you push the pistons in, put the lid, loosen, another tip, loosen the cap, but don't take it completely off, because brake fluid is designed to soak up moisture and condensation. And if you leave that off on a humid day, it'll sit there and actually soak moisture into the brake fluid. So don't do that. Just loosen the cap. Don't forget to tighten the cap when you're done. But the reason, if it's been topped off, whenever you push these pistons back into the caliper, you're gonna push fluid out of the master cylinder, and it's just gonna make a mess. I mean, it's not going to be detrimental, but to prevent making a mess, you don't want to do that. So the easy way, I've seen, they make all kinds of tools and stuff to push the pistons back into the calipers, but this is the easiest way that you can possibly do it. Just take a big screwdriver. You can also use a pry bar. Doesn't have to be real big. And what you're going to do, you're just going to get in here and you're just going to easily pry, and hopefully you're seeing that piston be pushed back into its fully retracted position. Now when I unbolt this, the piston's already pushed in. I'm going to put the new pads on, and the caliper will slide right back in there, and everything will be good. So now that we've got that, let me get my light set up. If you don't have one of these Harbor Freight Braun lights, you need to go out and get you one. Very, very nice. Now I'm going to do all this with hand tools. Just break the nuts loose, or the bolts loose. Make sure that your boots, these rubber boots, anything rubber that you see on your system, make sure they're in good shape. If they're not, then just go to the parts where they sell all that stuff. You can get new boots and everything. This car, like I say, has only got 50,000 miles, and so everything's in good shape. Take a look at your pins. This is a bolt pin. This is what the caliper slides on. Make sure that's clean, no rust. And I'll show you what I put on it to make sure that it stays like that. They make special brake grease and everything, and you can get that if you want. But I'll show you what I use, and I've never had a problem. That one looks good. And there's the caliper. Comes right off. The piston is retracted back into its spot. Don't let it hang by the hose. Just try to find a spot to rest it. Now when you take your pads off, pay attention. It's a good idea. Have your pads ready. Let me open this little bag up. Pay attention to where the clips are. Any kind of clips, any kind of wear indicators, because you're going to have a couple different looking pads. You're going to have your standard pad, just looks like this. Then one of them most likely will have the wear indicator attached to it. You want to put that wear indicator on properly for it to work, for it to vibrate and make that god-awful squeal to let you know that you need pads. That's got to be positioned right. So all I'm going to do, pop these old ones out. And you can tell they're not in too bad a shape. The fronts are the worst ones. I'll show you those here in a minute. I'm just starting on the rears. But yeah, here's the rear. Whoops. Pry this one out of there. Okay, now you see this one's the one that's got the wear indicator. The wear indicator was up top. The way these wear indicators work is if it's rubbing going outward, it doesn't make near the squeal than whenever it's coming. Whenever the rotor is going against it this way, that's when it really makes. You can actually put, you know, I could actually put this on like that, as long as the wear indicator doesn't interfere. Some cars it does. This one it does look like it probably would prevent me from putting it on, but some cars you can put these pads on in either direction and the wear indicator will be going the wrong direction. Won't cause any problem other than the fact that when it finally hits that, it's not going to make that god-awful squeal that it's supposed to let you know that that your pads are worn. Okay, make sure your shims are on. That's what keeps back in the old days, before they started putting these shims on, disc brakes was just notorious for just disc brake squeal. Make sure these clips are in good shape. If they're rusted up, here in Texas we don't get any rust or anything for the most part, so make sure those are clean. And what I like to do is I just use anti-seize, and all you do, make sure I'm in camera, you just put just a little dab. Anti-seize is weather resistant. This is nickel. It's high temp, so brake temperature is not going to affect it. Okay, pad number one. Now the other pad, will go on the same way. I'm going to butter this one up with some, and he says you don't want to put too much of this stuff on. Don't put a lot. I mean, literally just a thin coat is all that's needed. You don't want it slinging all over the place. You don't want it coating the rotor. Okay, so whichever is easiest, whether it's going in through the top or the bottom. Okay, done deal. Let me get something to wipe my fingers off with. And like I say, these boots, they're intact, they're not ripped, they look good. I'm going to go ahead and get the pins. I also kind of butter up the pins with the same stuff. You don't have to do this. If you've already got plenty of grease and stuff on them, then you'll probably be good to go. Just be careful you don't knock the pads out of the way. So the caliper's on there. All I got to do is reinsert the pins. Make sure your boot's in position. Make sure that moves back and forth real nice, and then tighten up bolts. This one's completely done. Took maybe 5 minutes, maybe 10 since I was talking and demonstrating. Like I say, there's one of the old pads. As long as it moves back and forth like that. Oh, and don't ever forget, after you do pads, brakes of any kind, before you put it in gear to back out or move, you pump that brake until you get a solid brake. If I remember, I'll make sure I show you that. But, okay, so I'm going to go over to the other side. I'm not going to show the other side. It's going to be the same exact way, but I will show the front whenever I get to the front. Okay, we're over here on the front. Pretty much a similar deal. It's going to be a bigger, the fronts are always going to be a bigger size. Whenever you stop and that weight transfer takes place, your fronts do the majority of the stopping. Depending on what report, statistics you read. It's anywhere from 60 to 80% of your stopping power comes from the front brake. So generally your front brakes wear out quicker. But if a car's designed good, they balance that braking load to where you'll see your front and your rear brakes will wear pretty close to the same. But the front brakes on this are worn a little bit more than the rear. And we'll go through and replace the front. Now I'm on the passenger side now. Let me see if I can get the camera in a position to where it's not going to be in my way, but still be able to give you guys a view. Okay, same deal. I'm going to see if I can get in here. Hopefully you can see that I'm just giving a nice even pry and compressing that piston. You don't want to do it so fast that you're forcing the fluid back through the ABS module any faster than necessary. Okay. Break the 2 bolts loose. Make sure your boots, any rubber pieces are in good shape. Especially if you have a car that's got quite a few miles on it. You're gonna, like I say, this one's only got about 50,000, so I'm not really expecting anything to be in bad shape. but you can see the piston's compressed all the way in there. So I'm not going to have to, you don't have to get no tool. I don't even own one of those piston compression tools. Maybe someday I might need one, and I'll regret not ever getting one, but I don't know how many different brake jobs I've done, and I have never needed one. Let me grab the brakes. And again, you want to pay attention to where the wear indicator is. I can already see on this one. Yeah, maybe I was wrong on that. Okay, this one, each pad's got a wear indicator. And if your brakes do not have shims, take them back, get brakes with shims. If you don't have shims on your brakes, you're going to have squeal. Can almost guarantee you. Okay, so here's the new brake pads. These are the wear indicators on these, and on the fronts, usually you do not see wear indicators on both the inboard and outboard pads. This car's got them like that. Probably, you know, that's probably a good thing, because sometimes if you don't have a free moving caliper, one pad will wear out quicker than the other. So again, I'm just going to put a little bit of anti-seize just right there on the parts that slide. I'll go ahead and do this side first. Get in there. Okay. Where'd mother pad go? Oh. Okay, here's the inboard pad. I'm going to try to do this and stay out of y'all's way, which is going to make it a little bit tougher for me. Okay, yeah, that's good. So that's all there is to it. Make sure these, now the way this one's, notice that this one didn't have the pinned bolts. The pin, you know, the pin doesn't go all the way through. The pin is this piece right here. Make sure those slide and are smooth, and I can still, I mean, they're just as smooth as can be, and there, so you know there's plenty of grease in there. The boots are still intact, so the grease hadn't been washed out by water. So I'm going to put the caliper back in position. Start my bolts. there it is. So that's pretty much all there is to it. Of course, you want to look at any hardware. If any hardware is damaged, you'll want to replace that. So just pay attention to where your pads come off and put them on the same way, and you'll be good. I'm going to go get the other side done. We'll check the master cylinder, and don't forget to, when you first get in the car, whether you only do the front or the rear, that you pump your brake until you get a solid pedal before you put it in gear. Because I can promise you, on some cars, it takes 3 or 4 pumps of the pedal before you get that solid pedal back. And if you've got a car parked behind you, or you're in your garage or whatever, and you put it in gear and you think you're going to be able to stop the car, it's not going to stop until you get those pads pushed back up against the rotors. So make sure you pump your brake pedal. And don't forget to tighten the cap on the master cylinder. And that's pretty much it. You'll be good. Anyway, this was a 2014 Nissan Altima. This is just your typical, make sure your rotors, as you can see on, on this car, the rotor looks great. So there's no reason to replace rotors the way people replace them now. Ideally, if you take it to a reputable shop, they're probably going to say that it'd be a good idea to turn them, and I would agree with that. If they don't charge an arm and a leg, have them turn them. They'll turn just the minimum amount off, and you'll get a fresh surface. But I can tell by looking at these rotors, they're not glazed. They're worn even. The pedal does not pulsate. The pads were just getting a little thin, so they wanted them replaced. So there's no reason to go throwing rotors on. These rotors are probably better quality than what the Chinese rotors you're going to buy at the auto parts store or at a shop. Unless they go back with OEM rotors, you're probably going to get a worse product than what the factory rotor is anyway. So I would stick with the factory rotors before I bought a Chinese rotor any day. Unless the rotor's damaged, warped, gouged because you let it go metal to metal, and it's just really got grooves in it and it needs to be replaced, I would stick with the factory rotors for as long as you possibly can. Anyway, this is just your typical brake job on most your cars now. This happens to be a 2014 Nissan Altima. That's all I got.